Welcome to the Run It Studios podcast, talking about running things, literally and metaphorically, with resilience, mindset, and culture in motion. Welcome to the Run It Studios podcast. My name is Trina Wilcox, and I think it's been at least a year ago now. I had a wonderful guest named Keisha McMillen. You are back. You're with Liberated I keep wanting to say creations, creatives. And so you're the founder of this, and I want you to tell me a little bit about it and then how you got involved with this project we're going to talk about and Paige's connection too. So, welcome both of you to the show and go ahead, Keisha, take it away and tell me all about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back, Trina. I'm excited to be here. So Liberated Creatives is a multidisciplinary arts agency, arts collective, and we are creating unique art experiences, collaborating with different organizations, different artists, and everything we do is rooted in healing, self expression, and the effort to build community. It was about a year ago when I was first on your podcast. And back then, Liberated was just an idea. I didn't even have socials or anything. And I was still back in my old apartment. And now Liberated is has a website, has the socials. We've had a few different events from since a year ago. And at the time, around the same time a year ago, I went through a big transition in life and found myself having to move back home and facing some other different challenges and kind of was in a situation of how far am I willing to go in order to chase my dreams, such as having to move back home and kind of start over and rely on friends and family for that support. Um, so when I was facing housing instability, I always use the arts as a tool to heal and grow and kind of just transform myself. And I'm always someone with my art who wants to do something really ambitious.
Mhm.
I'm a go-getter and I love to do multiple different things. So I thought, why don't I do a little film about my journey, my process, my progress of going from having an idea for a business to taking that leap and then kind of having to navigate life at the same time. I have worked with Rex Ibanez, who is the board president of Springfield Tenants Unite. I've worked with Rex on many different projects in the past. And so when I knew I wanted to talk about, a little
Oh
high five is
my
here with us.
gosh, love it. Really
But when I realized that I wanted to use film and kind of a documentary style to navigate this new transition in my life, I knew that this project was going to be bigger than me.
Mm,
And I wanted it to not just be about my story, but find a way to connect with community and instigate change on a bigger level when it comes to homelessness, housing instability. So, with Rex working with Springfield Tenants Unite or STUN, um, I knew that they were the person I wanted to go to and talk with about potentially collaborating on another ambitious Keisha project again.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and when pitching that project, multiple people within STUN realized that they wanted to share and express their own journeys as well and felt a deep connection to this project. And so that is what has brought us here today with Paige, who is another member of STUN. And we are doing this project called Finding Home, where we're interviewing artists and their experiences with housing instability and homelessness and how the arts have affected that or
Mhm.
impacted their journey in some way or another.
Okay. Paige, when you got involved, what was your first thought about the whole idea?
Yeah, thank you. I think I was just really drawn to the collaborative aspect that Keisha introduced the project with. This is a collaborative effort I've always been very drawn to collaborative projects. I went to film school. I wanted that to be my career. And specifically because of that creative collaborative element. And so when this project came through, it had been years since I'd been in film. And I'm not used to being in front of the camera. I've been behind the camera a lot.
Yeah.
So, but even though it was a new experience in film, being in front of the camera instead of behind, I was like, this is my shot to get in it again and see where I am now. And I love film. I had some experiences, in the industry that were really difficult and made me question whether I had a place in it or not. And so this was a very warm, welcoming, and really inviting space to, yeah, try it again, reintroduce myself to the medium and from a little bit of a different angle. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Keisha, when you started out with the idea, how did you start kind of mapping out where it would go? I mean, did you just think,
Mhm.
who were you going to talk to? How were you going to approach them?
Yeah, that's a great question because that answer has changed from where it
Yeah.
started to where it is now.
Okay.
And at first I work for Plotline, which is a local film and media nonprofit, and we teach kids how to make movies. And those movies are usually, 5 minutes long in a class setting, collaborative class setting. And so that's kind of my experience with film, really, is from that dynamic. And so I pitched this project thinking, we're just going to do another short film like I do with my students in class.
Yeah.
Um, I was kinda naive with that approach. But I knew I wanted to interview, because at first it was just going to be my story and something I could then just give to Stun to help instigate change in homelessness, housing instability, and just use it as a creative tool to get people to ask questions and take action towards the housing crisis. But then working with Stun and realizing that so many members of Stun also wanted to share their stories. A lot of the people on the team volunteered to share their stories because they just resonated with the project in one way or another. And so the people we interviewed, some of them are members of Stun, some of them are family members of mine who have had their own journeys with housing. And some of the interviewees are local friends of mine who just have a passion about the arts and about housing politics. And so that's kind of how we went from this approach of what was going to be just like a short little 5 to 10 minute video. And then we realized we're getting a lot of good footage from all these interviewees who want to talk about their stories. And so a 5 minute short has turned into about a 40 to 50-minute feature.
Yeah.
um, and so it's, yeah, just kind of navigating, really just creating a safe space and a brave space for people to be as vulnerable and find connection and community and just by sharing their stories.
And Paige, as co-curator, what what does that really kind of mean from your perspective and how you guide the footage and the questioning and putting it all together?
Yeah, I haven't been a part of like the editing process of the film as much, but I will say, as someone who was interviewed in the film, I was really mindful about, obviously nervous because I haven't really told this part of my story publicly a lot. But yeah, being really aware of, how my experience with the arts and housing is really interconnected,
Mhm.
and how there's a sense of resourcefulness that came and creativity that came into making ends meet. Yeah, I've lived all over the country. I went to school on the East Coast, lived in a couple of states on the East Coast, moved to the West Coast, lived in California for a couple of years, and then ended up back here. And all of those experiences have been rental housing. So bringing that piece in of like, this crisis isn't just Springfield.
Yeah.
This rental housing crisis and housing crisis in general is happening all over the country. And so bringing that in and knowing how that might inform like the picture, as well as, you know, puzzle piecing together everybody else's stories as well. Um, and then in terms of the installation, um, it's been really interesting. And the installation is a child's bedroom, so this experience is intended to be a very nostalgic, very you know, conjuring those childhood memories with,
Yeah.
especially, you know, of people of Keisha and my generation, kind of millennial Gen Z, of this like early 2000s 90s paraphernalia, you know, toys,
Right.
posters, you know, dressed to the nines of all of those things that made up our childhood, and giving people that experience of not even just like conjuring one specific memory of one person's childhood. It's intended to encompass as many people's experiences from that era as possible. So we're really hoping that in doing that, people will be able to explore this collective versus personal kind of interplay of you're in this space and it's very personal, but at the same time you're sharing it with other people, and how as a child that is kind of part of life, that your bedroom is sort of shared with your friends. You play with toys and you play games, and like in my case, you know, make little polymer clay sculptures or something with your friends in your bedroom. And then as you age, your bedroom gets more and more and more private
Yeah.
and insular and isolating. And just that dichotomy of, you know, can we be adults and share this intimate personal space? And how does that feel? And what does that, you know, what memories does that evoke from our childhood? What new memories can we create from that experience? And so this installation plus the film is kind of, you know, it's together creating this immersive environment that really makes you question what home truly means.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I do feel like that, we grow out of it and it's like, no, get rid of all of the fun things and make it very grown up. And do you
Mhm.
feel like we start losing ourselves at maybe adolescence or a certain point in time? Or do we lose a connection to our creative side as we're growing into quote unquote responsible adulting? Keisha.
Ooh, yeah, that's a great question. I Yes, I think when it comes to just different challenges in life or traumatic experiences or just the pressures of growing up, even just teaching a class the other night to high school students who are 16, 17 years old, they're already stressing about finances. They're stressing about, you know, um, how am I going to get a car? How am I going to get to college? Am I getting enough money at the job I have? Do I need to take on a second job? And, I think as adults, we want to stay connected to our inner child as much as possible, but there's something about these external pressures or
Mhm.
what we want in life when it comes to like the materialistic things or how do we want to show up within community and that recognition we have for ourselves. And as someone who is definitely really connected to her whimsy side and her ambitious, like avant-garde, like artsy self,
Yeah.
I can definitely, I mean, for me personally, going out into the world, sometimes that energy can be really intense, even for myself. And so, kind of exuberating this passionate, personality of mine, it can be, maybe off-putting to other people sometimes and kind of navigating other people's emotions and their whereabouts and there comes a time when we're so focused on how are we going to get by
Mhm.
that it's hard for us to kind of slow down and kind of rest and just be playful when we're trying to tackle all these different goals that come with adulthood. And so I do think that just based on external environments and different challenges we navigate, we kind of lose that inner child that
Mm.
we really strive to hold on to.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Paige?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, you're totally right, Keisha, that we, especially in the time where we are now, we are so focused on survival
Mhm.
uh, at this point that play becomes, a throwaway.
Yeah.
You don't have time. You feel like you don't have time for it, and honestly, people don't have time for it a lot of the time. And I also think that, you know, especially with this space being kind of stored in time of the, early 2000s, late 90s. I feel like that was one of the maybe not the last frontier of really, strong analog toys and analog things. But in our memories, it is very much chocked full of that. And we're getting to a point which I hope will change as as things shift. But things are getting more and more and more digital, and we own less analog things. We own less things in general. Less people own their own houses, and so creating this space where it is so physical,
Mhm.
and these, even though no one coming to this owns these items, they can interact with the items, and they can feel a sense of autonomy in the space. So I think, all that being said, I think this whole project is, an exploration of, you know ownership versus renting versus,
Mhm.
the physical things we have, the memories we have to hold on to, and how all of those things interplay in our sense of belonging.
The trailer is on your website, Keisha, and it's heavy. You get this sense of seriousness, and it is. So tell me what it was like for you to kind of drop that curtain and share something that you said that you never thought you would talk about.
Ooh, honestly, Trina, I think at the time I was coming from this rebellious state in the
Yeah.
sense of I was still feeling some. I mean, at the time when we started this project, I was still healing. I was still in the midst of just transitioning from, you know, unemployment, loss of funds, starting a new business, moving back home. I mean, lots of huge transitions. And I kind of just felt like, always being someone who uses the art as a tool, almost felt like in order to overcome this grief and this resentment and this even moments of bitterness I was feeling, it was really important that I not process all of that by myself.
Oh.
Um, and finding community and connection and just even just having the courage to pitch the project to Stun and then have so many members just be like, thank you so much for sharing your story. I have a similar story. Thank you for just being brave enough to share, which makes me feel like I want to share a little bit about that because I think once we come into community and have that collective vulnerability, it makes us realize that there's so many of us kind of suffering in silence, and we
Mm.
don't have to do that because a lot of us have had experiences like this, or, how you can go from one stage in life to another so quickly. It's hard to navigate that transition alone. And I think when it comes to grief, we immediately don't want to burden others with, our troubles and trials. But there's a sense of, again, I'm going to say the word community or communal connection a lot here, but I think, you know, really it's been a really important value for me within this process and working with this team to ensure that we can create brave and safe spaces just to check in with ourselves emotionally. So you'll probably hear a lot of people from my team or from the Finding Home team talk about how, yeah, sometimes we do hold meetings just to check in with each other, just to see how we're doing. And I start all of our meetings starting off with that emotional connection. Um, and I think, we're just in a time and place in life, like as a collective whole, um, where we're facing a lot of different challenges. And I think we're just stronger together and we can overcome these challenges together if we just kind of drop our guards and these barriers and open ourselves to find that communal healing.
So some of the resentment you spoke of, is that kind of
Mm.
the you were just so frustrated that your path was taking the direction that felt beyond your control and you were needing to change go back home and that felt like a defeat to you?
Yes. Yes, it did.
Mhm.
I grew up very much in this state of I I wanted to be in control of my life at a very young age.
Mhm.
Kind of facing childhood challenges. You know, my parents divorced. My mother, there were times when we had housing instability growing up, whether it was sleeping at a friend's house or at a boyfriend's house, or are we going to be in the shelter tonight or sleeping in the car? But then also had a lot of great times in childhood with housing stability and, all the beautiful things that come with childhood as well. But, at a very young age, I was very independent, hyper independent. Started working by the time I was old enough to work and thought, I'm going to get myself to college. I'm going to get that car. I'm going to ensure that my adulthood doesn't reflect the challenging parts of my childhood.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I started to kind of choose myself in my adulthood and realize the life I had built for myself wasn't reflecting what I truly wanted, wasn't truly reflecting my values, and I was kind of playing small for myself. Navigating an apartment that was kind of not working out for me anymore, a relationship that wasn't working out for me anymore. Um, I kind of felt like I what I needed to do was just take that leap and choose myself and start over. But, kind of feeling that ambition and that go-getter attitude at the time, you know, when you're in it longer than you expect,
Yeah.
you kind of that's where the resentment kind of starts to build of like, what have I done?
Yeah.
Was it all what could I've taken a easier route? Could I've taken a more stable route, a more secure one? Did I do all the things necessary to get me out of this situation?
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of having to navigate in this project too. You mentioned the seriousness of the project, but there's also a lot of elements of this project where we shine a light of hope and building something together. But, in this process, there's a lot of emotional
Mhm.
navigations that we had to address, not just personally, but as a team. We all kind of faced our own challenges within this project. And I think highlighting that within the process is just as important as highlighting our milestones and our accomplishments and our achievements in this project as well.
Paige, how does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I relate a lot to where Keisha is and was at the beginning of this project, especially in the, oh wow, what have I, have I
Yeah.
taken the right path? Like this is not life has not turned out as I planned. I mean, as I said, I went to film school. The plan all along was to go out in the industry, make it as a production designer, maybe a director, and I graduated school in 2019 moved out to California, and nothing went as planned.
Yeah.
I was not living in LA proper, but about 45 minutes away in Ontario, California, and I was working minimum wage jobs, I'll be
Yeah.
honest. I was, hustling trying to find work, for film, and then the pandemic hit, within, what, 6 months of my sister and I and our friend moving there. And so the industry shut down,
Yeah.
and, it was a blessing and a curse because, um, it made me realize, all of these experiences I have had so far in the film industry have not aligned with what actually is right for me. My health is suffering, number 1,
Yeah.
and 2, I just couldn't find any joy in it. Like, I went into it, as I said earlier, for the collaborative aspect and that curiosity and building something together, and, that exists in practice, but in the actual experience of that joyful, almost, miraculous feeling of collaborating with people, of bringing something into the world with people, just wasn't there. And the hustle culture of it, and working the hierarchy, working up the ladder to, maybe, hopefully someday, fingers crossed, make it to, a spot where you have some creative direction in the project.
Mhm.
It just seemed less and less worth it, to keep pursuing. And so, yeah, like Keisha, I ended up back at home in Springfield. I got sick. I got COVID. I got long COVID now, and I was like, I don't know where my life goes from here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a lot what I talk about in the film, and my sister Blythe, who's also featured in the film, speaks about as well, and how that's affected them. But yeah, I mean, I'm watching cuts of the film, hearing people's stories in our meetings, and the emotional part of the production that Keisha talks about, and honoring how emotional it is, has been a very healing process for
Yeah.
me, both, in my story being validated, but also in working in film, because that's not something you do in the film industry. Nobody's like, "How are you doing?" Nobody says like, "What's your emotional landscape today?" And wants to
Right.
respect it. It's like, "Oh, are you going to be a problem? Maybe, and get in the way of our
Yeah.
16-hour schedule."
Yeah.
But nobody wants to hear about anything until, maybe it's a medical emergency, and that's
Right.
unfortunately where the industry is. Um, and it's what drove me away from it. And so having an experience like this where, we're on a super small set,
Yeah.
it's people who really care about the humanity of the work,
Yeah.
or and just the humanity of the people doing the work. That has been, a blessing in so many ways, and, has encouraged me to, like, hey, maybe I can still do this. And there's an
Yeah.
alternative way,
Good.
instead of having to go the industry route.
I
And
love that so much. And I love that you guys keep saying community, community, because I think oftentimes, that is thrown around a lot. People say, find your community, but until you need it and find it and understand it, I don't think it can fully click. And you mentioned long COVID, for example. And I have been in a situation where I've struggled with that. I often will put that in the back, like, no, I've got to move on with my life. And then when it catches me in a low, challenging point, and I see someone in that community that has experienced that and can relate, it's game changing. It gives me that hope that, okay, I understand. And I think that is what is so important that you guys are doing, or you're highlighting things can be understood and shared. And I think that's fantastic. Keisha, what do you hope people will take away from this project?
I hope that people will feel brave enough to reflect and ask themselves these questions. Um, what does home mean to me? Not just like idealistically, but what
Right.
does it feel like, right? Because, being here in this house, I'm like, this isn't how I would decorate. This is not how I would feel. But there's a part, and I'll give a little Easter egg. But there's a part that Paige and Blythe talk about in their interview, where they talk about how home needs to be this internal foundation before it becomes external.
Mm,
Um, and something in navigating that internal foundation for myself as able to make me feel like, "Oh, wait, I can feel at home with just who I am. I feel at home with these people who are giving me a space to feel seen and to be heard and to just share these vulnerabilities and these stories with each other and come together and see these beautiful talent and intelligent from every member of the team." And like Paige was saying, like having the opportunity to be like, I can do what I love to do in the film industry, but do it in a different way, do
yes.
it in an independent way, do it in a way that allows me and my skills to shine. And um, so I just want to preface something that Paige has been really working hard on is in addition to this film, we are doing an art installation of a childhood bedroom. And it's going to be interactive. We've got posters from the 90s. We've got um GameCube. You can play games, you can build puzzles, you can make arts and crafts, you can write in a diary, you can put headphones on and listen to a CD player, hopefully, and
Yeah.
we're still putting all of the different elements together, but I want people to walk in this space and ask themselves, what is this nostalgic feeling?
Yeah.
Is it exciting? Is it hopeful? Is it a little melancholy? What was my childhood bedroom like? How does this make me feel? Do I feel differently being in the space by myself versus being in the space with my friends? And what is my connection to homelessness or housing instability?
Yeah.
Do I know anyone who's experienced that? Maybe someone I do know experienced that and I had no idea. How does
Right.
that make me feel? I want this project, or my hope for this project is that people start to ask questions that they've never asked for themselves and for their community.
Love it. We're running out of time, Paige. Quickly, your hope for the project?
Yeah, I share a lot of the same sentiments as Keisha that this is a chance to explore our own stories as well as each other's stories, and that we all really belong.
Yes.
That they're like Keisha said, and I talk about in the film, and Blythe talks about in the film, that it is an internal the home is an internal piece, and that if and especially with our creativity, if there isn't foundation there, if we feel insecure or uncomfortable about our creativity, there's it's really difficult to find comfort in a physical space. And we can talk about interior design, and we can talk about, oh, how I want it to look and how I want it to feel, but in the terms of like a physical home, but yeah, if the pieces aren't there internally, it's really difficult feel comfortable. And that's not a pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of claim. It's more, how can you connect with people that share your experiences, which is what Sun has been to me, Springfield Tenancy Night has been to me. And knowing that, and this project, and knowing that other people share those difficulties, and we can still triumph with those difficulties in our past or in our present.
Thank you both so much for sharing. I feel like this is just the beginning of something much bigger. So I hope you'll come back as the progression continues. Keisha, where can people go to learn more?
Yes, you can go to www.liberatedcreatives.com/finding home.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Thank
Trina.
you.